Thank you for joining me on this TotalMD video. Today we're going to be talking about the EHR and just go through some of the flow of the EHR. We're not going to hit on every single feature available. Since TotalMD is not a specialty specific EHR, it works with all kinds of specialties, really could probably work with any specialty out there. And the flexibility makes it so that not only does it work for them, but works really well for those different specialties because there's a lot of customization that's available for it. So for the purpose of today's video, we're just going to be doing some basic things here, but how it's done could be different just kind of depending on how each specialty runs, depending on each specialty, and even individually each practice, because the same different practices within the same specialty will run or do things differently as well, depending on the size of the specialty or just the doctors or what the makeup of the practice is. So at some point an individual is going to be ready to be seen. They've come into the office, checked in, maybe filled out paperwork, maybe verified information, given an insurance card that's been scanned into TotalMD and a driver's license as well, depending on how the practice is using the software. But here, this appointment for Antonio has been marked as ready, meaning he's ready to be seen. And so maybe the MA comes to the waiting area and calls Antonio back to the office. So I'm going to right click on this appointment, and this is certainly not the only place you can begin a new encounter, but oftentimes it is where it's done. The MA begins a new encounter and chooses the template. So this is just going to be a follow-up visit. So we'll select this particular template and we'll hit use template. It's going to come up with a message and ask us about the care team. And we can say, well, the appointment was with Dr. Arquette, so that's who they're seeing today. This care team option is going to be the previous visit. So if there happen to be different people this visit versus today's visit, the appointment, it just gives you different options. But I'm going to say that he's being seen by Dr. Arquette since that's who the appointment is with. It loads the template, and up here at the top we have 4 different sections, which we'll get to here in just a minute. And then over here on the right hand side we have some different tabs. So we've got encounter info, diagnosis, procedure and plan, notes and docs, orders, and other encounters. And then this area here is actually the note that's being built. And of course, depending on the resolution or the size of the monitor, will depend on how much stuff you can see all at one time. In my particular instance, I'm doing this on a laptop, and so it's squeezed together a little bit, but if I needed to, I could uncheck encounter info, for example, and I could see this full screen. Okay. I'm going to go back to encounter info. We've got a chief complaint here, and we can put this in. You can have chief complaints defaulted in here if you'd like. You can add additional members to the care team. So if there are other people in the office you want to mark as part of that care team, you can change that. If demographic information has already been populated in the patient demographic screen, you'd see that here. There's some tobacco information and some other things. And some other things down here that are available. We won't hit on every single item here. We have our diagnosis tab. When we click on diagnosis, it's going to give us, if they've been in before, which in this case he has, it's going to give us the problems from previous encounters. So if, for example, these are the same reasons why this individual is coming in today, I can just click on each one of them and say it's a problem for today's encounter. If these had been marked as chronic, they would have already been in here as this encounter's problems. Okay, so they were problems from a previous encounter, but I set them both for today, and so now they're under this encounter's problems. If I wanted to add an additional diagnosis, I can just come down here and look at any of my unused or past used, but I already have the past used ones up there. So we have all these unused ones here. And you just would select from the list of codes. You can type in a code or the description and click search, and that code will populate. Over here we're going to have procedure codes. So if I wanted to put in a procedure code, it has my most commonly used ones up at the top. So I'm just going to say this is an office visit, but you can have as many procedure codes in here as you want. What's great is that because this is an all-in-one program, those procedure codes and diagnosis codes that you put in here are going to flow over into the billing area. so that who's ever doing the billing doesn't have to manually put this information in. They don't have to take it from a super bill and rekey it all in the person's ledger. It's going to automatically flow over and make it much easier, and there's less information that has to be keyed in. The Notes and Documentation tab, you can put in educational material, create some internal notes, notes to different care team members if you'd like. Here in the Orders tab is where you're going to put in any kinds of imaging, any labs. So I'm going to right click in here, and there's some different options here. So I'm going to go to do an outside lab, and I'm going to say I'm going to send them out to do a cholesterol lab here. So I'm going to connect that to this particular code. Might not necessarily go together, but we'll do that. Save that lab, and now I can see that that's part of this. And here is the lab down here as well, and it's going to be built in as part of this note here as well. And then other encounters, it's nice, it just allows you to see any previous visits. So if you went back and looked at any of these previous dates of service, we can look at that and see any of the information that might have been put in. We can even copy and paste information from there if we need to. Little things that might make it easy for you. Now over here, I'm going to unselect this tab here, get us back to full screen, and we're going to work on our sections. And the sections are what's going to help us build the body of this note here. So some of the information has already come in, and this encounters problems. We have some different information here up at the top. You can set it up to pull in your practice logo if you'd like. Some different options that are available. But normally when you would come in here, these different circles are going to be different colors, usually white or red. The first time, a red means it's a section that you have to fill out. White's an optional section. Again, you can have as many of these sections as you want. Some offices want just one section and everything's done in one. Some of them have each little piece broken out into its own separate section. It's purely preference. In my case here, I've got 4. But these ones are green, meaning they've already been filled out. And we didn't fill them out on this for this visit today, but they are set up as what are called persistent sections, and they can be set up this way for any section. But what that means is I'm pulling over the information from the last visit, and it's populating in here. So generally with history and things like that, medical history, social history, surgical history, family history, whatever that happens to be, that usually isn't going to change. And so when you first came in, and if this was a brand new patient, this section might be, the little circle might be white or red. And once you fill it out for the first time, then it starts copying that information in each subsequent visit, if that's how you have it set up. So in our case, the MA has brought Antonio back and maybe put him on the scale. He's going to take weight, do some blood pressure once he gets set in the room. So I pull this up, and it's pulled over the information that came from the last visit. So I have that. So when I'm typing in today's stuff, I can say, oh, great, he's the same temperature. And this is customizable. This is just an example of one. So if you didn't want a Celsius option, or you didn't want a Fahrenheit and you only wanted one of them or something like that, that's totally fine. We're going to say that there's a slight change. He's now at 213. The temperature is the same. Pulse is slightly different to 64. The respiratory rate is down to 51. And their blood pressure was 125 over 83, 82. Okay, so I've made the change there, and now if I need to update their medical history, I could, but it likely hasn't changed since last time. Family history probably likely hasn't changed. So if any of this stuff changes, we can make a change to it, but if it hasn't, great. This was already filled out previously. The MA is done. They can save and close that. And now it's going to be updated down in the body of the note with that newer information that I have in here. It's got my new weight and everything like that. Review of systems also was populated previously. I'm going to click update and maybe go down through these things and decide if anything else has changed. In our case, nothing has changed. Everything's going to be the same here. If I want to, though, I can just click in here and type anything I want in here. Not only is there text options available that you can type, but there can be options set up in here, which I think we'll see in a minute, where there's choices, where we can almost set up something where you click on it and it's going to come up with a list of options that are available to you instead of having to just type everything in. So there's a lot of shortcuts and tools that are available. We'll go over a few of those here in just a minute. But in our case, again, we're just going to save and close it the MA is done with their work, maybe they come in here, save this note, and they've closed out of it and they're going to go move on. And when the doctor's ready, the doctor's going to come in here and start from where that was left off. And so maybe the doctor's ready at some point. He comes in, right clicks on the same one that says new encounter, and a message comes up and says, do we want to use the existing counter that was already created for today, or do we want to do a new one? I say, no, we're just going to use the existing one that was already started. That's what we want to do. Pick up where the MA left off. So that opens back up here. And because it's the second time it's been opened, it does not open to the encounter tab like it did the very first time it was open. Okay, it just opens like this, and the doctor can go over any of the stuff by clicking on update, or you can scroll down in here and look at any of these things. There's options to zoom in and make this area down here bigger or smaller. I can, do a dual page view as an example and see a couple pages side by side. So just kind of depending on your preference. I'm going to go back to single page view, and he would come in and say, okay, I'm going to do the exam. And again, this is totally customizable. You can do it however you like, but here's some different options that are available. And so they come in and maybe they fill this out how they see fit. And not only can you make changes, delete stuff, add things, different things like that, but you can also change the font size or color of the font if you want things to stand out, make it bold or whatever's going to be your preference. But if we wanted different options in here to choose from, we can certainly do that. And I'm going to put something in here just to kind of show some of the features and functionality here that doesn't necessarily pertain to what we're doing here today, because again, this isn't a real visit, but just to kind of give some samples of what's available to you. And so one of the options is you can do what are called smart phrases, and you can do a smart phrase either by coming up here to the top right and clicking the drop down by the insert, and there's a bunch of different things that you can insert. Here's some patient information, things like that can all be part of it. Pronouns as well, so if you want to set up certain things to automatically pull that in. But in my case, I'm going to do a note, and I'm not actually going to click on this because just for the sake of showing quickness of it, I don't think the mouse is always the best option. So there's a shortcut key, which is F2. Okay, and there could be any number of different things that are available to you depending on just your preference. But in this case, just again for the sake of the demo, I'm going to type in MDD, comes up, and then I'm just going to hit enter on my keyboard. And that automatically, just by doing that very quickly, populated this entire giant section about major depressive disorder. And just here's a bunch of stuff in here. And I could go in and edit anything in here I wanted to as well. If I wanted to type something in here where it says blank, I could do that. I could delete out extra sections if there's more in here than I wanted to be in here. Whatever you'd like to do. Okay. So we'll go ahead and save that note. In this case, it turns green, saying that that's done. And so now we're going to move over here to the SOAP section. So we'll click add detail there. Got some additional things in here that we can put in. Again, customizable. This is how a specific office wanted it. And so I'm using a template from a specific office client of ours. But you can come in here and type in anything you want. Or again, if you want different options, I'm going to add something. And again, normally you don't necessarily have to add this. They could already show up in here as options. But just to give you a little bit of an example, I put this in here, and I'm going to click on this option here to kind of give you an idea of what I mean by different choices that might become available to you depending on how it's set up. So we're going to click on daily, say that, and then it kind of put that in there. And I could have typed daily in there instead if I wanted to, different choices. There's a little spell check there, which is kind of nice. If I wanted to add additional things in here, they could say always has a morning cup of coffee. Okay, or something along those lines. Okay, so we're not going to, again, for the sake of the demo, finish that, but we'll save that. And again, it's going to, so we'll come down here and we'll do save and close. It's going to save that. And now we're done. We've finished all of our sections. We've put in our diagnosis codes, the procedure codes. All that information is in there, and we're ready to go. And we can, when we do that, we could print a clinical summary, which would basically be something that maybe could be given to a patient. When we do that, we can exclude certain areas of it if we want, where we say, hey, I don't want the patient to get this particular piece of information. It's not relevant to them having it directly. It's more of an internal thing, or even if it's not that it's not relevant, it's just or that you don't want them to have it. It's just, we want to consolidate space or whatnot. So you can uncheck certain sections and do different things like that. If they've received medications in the past, those would be part of this. So they're going to be down here at the bottom. So we can see in the past, we didn't put this in today, but maybe the previous visit, they had that put in, or they have medications that are taken that will automatically come over from the medications area of the software, the prescriptions area of the software. All that's done. So I'm going to quickly just touch on prescriptions. If they wanted to do a new prescription program is going to launch here. It's going to show us their active medications, which were the same ones we saw there. We can renew straight from here. We can do controlled substances. This will allow you to participate with PDMP, the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. We can choose different pharmacies. Every prescription you could probably possibly want is in here. But you can do medication reconciliations, whatever you need to do. Very, very easy program to use, very user-friendly. But then this information will flow back into the note as well as back into the patient record, where you can see all those medications. You can put in your allergies down here as well, whatever kind of information is beneficial for you related to writing prescriptions. Those prescriptions are then able to be sent electronically or printed to paper. So either option is available to you. Additionally, we did the one lab. So in here we said, hey, that was part of it. We were going to do this cholesterol lab here. So if I wanted to print an outside lab report that I could then give to the patient to take to the lab to get that work done, great, that will do that as well. There are a lot of other options in here, like creating a task that you can assign to another user in your office to maybe follow up something related to this note. You can track immunizations. Lab results can come back in. So if with certain labs, so if you clicked in here on this little beaker, they'll tell you, hey, we got some lab results back for Mickey Mouse. We could import those or post those into the individual's records. So that's nice and easy. You can come down and you can track implantable devices. So if somebody has a pacemaker or something like that, you can put that in there and get information related to the lot number and everything like that. And then you can print out doctor's notes and things like that. So for example, if there's a child that you're seeing that's going to miss school and they need a note from the doctor, you can quickly print those kinds of things out as well. So a lot of really cool tools that are available to you. In addition, there's things like clinical decision support, where you can go in and create certain rules, and when you begin a brand new encounter for somebody, it's going to run through those rules to see if there's any diagnosis codes or procedure codes or educational material that maybe should be given or part of that person's note, just based on the rules that were set up, if they meet that criteria. You also have the option to connect to the patient or other providers and send them the information electronically. So if a patient wants to be able to see their records, you can use our TotalMD Direct program, which will allow them to create an account, and you can electronically send them the records or send it to other providers as well. So again, a lot of different options. You can also create CCDA files to send to other doctors. You can create electronic files that can go, securely to a patient portal for the patient to be able to have access to them. But for now, I'm going to say that we're done here. I'm going to sign this off. And whether they sign off immediately or they want to come back later and sign it off when they're done, but we're going to sign it off. and it will allow us to go into the billing area of the software. So now from this point, the biller would be able to come in to the activities area, go to the encounter charge entry, click on list new procedures, and now our procedure that we did with those 2 diagnoses is here. They can look at it, edit it, modify it, whatever, and then post it. So generally they're going to come in, they're going to see a bunch of stuff. They probably would do this once or twice a day, even maybe once a week, depending on the size of the practice. View the information, all the stuff that's been put in, verify that it looks good, and then click post all, which will then move the information from here, each of the line items from the screen, into each individual person's ledger, so that then a claim can be created and sent. So that's how the system all works together. We'd love to show you more, go into more detail, talk about customization, show you how TotalMD would work specifically for you.